Welcome back to ZE Coins. Today we're exploring one such object, a simple coin, a 5-cent piece, but not just any nickel. This is the United States of America 1961 Jefferson 5-cent nickel, a coin that has fascinated collectors, historians, and everyday hobbyists for generations. By the end of this video, you'll not only understand its background, its mint marks, and what makes it collectible, but you'll also hear the special value that one particular version of this coin can reach, spoken in words exactly as requested. So settle in and let's dive deep into a minting process, and a coin that continues to spark curiosity more than 60 years later. The story of the 1961 Jefferson nickel begins long before the coin was struck. Its roots stretch back to 1938, when the United States Mint decided to replace the long-running Buffalo nickel with a new design that would honor the third President of the United States, Thomas Jefferson. A public design competition was announced, and the winning entry came from Felix Schlag, whose interpretation of Jefferson's portrait in Monticello, Jefferson's iconic Virginia home, became the foundation of the coin that millions of Americans would eventually carry in their pockets daily. By 1961, the Jefferson nickel design had already been in circulation for more than 2 decades. Yet that year's particular coins hold their own unique place in numismatic discussions. Not because of a major design change, but because the quirks of minting that year created several interesting varieties and conditions that later became valuable to collectors. In 1961, the United States Mint produced Jefferson nickels at 2 locations, Philadelphia and Denver. Coins struck in Philadelphia carried no mint mark at all, a common practice for Philadelphia minted coins at the time, while the coins struck in Denver proudly displayed a small D mint mark on the reverse of the coin, just to the right of Monticello. This mint mark, though tiny, is one of the key factors that coin collectors look for when determining rarity, desirability, and value. The Philadelphia Mint produced a massive number of nickels that year. Over 73 million 1961 coins came from Philadelphia. But the Denver Mint? Over 229 million pieces rolled out of its presses, far more than the Philadelphia output. This might lead you to assume that 1961 D nickels should be less valuable, but coin collecting is rarely so simple. Volume alone doesn't determine rarity. The condition of surviving coins, the sharpness of their strike, and the preservation quality all play major roles. And that's exactly where the 1961 coins become fascinating. Collectors of Jefferson nickels know that the early 1960s coins often suffered from weaker strikes. The details of Monticello, the pillars, windows, and lettering, can appear dull or blurry. So when a sharp, crisp, highly detailed 1961 nickel appears, collectors immediately pay attention. This is especially true for what numismatists refer to as full steps nickels, or FS nickels. These are coins where the steps leading up to Monticello on the reverse are clearly defined, usually requiring 5 or 6 visibly separated steps. Achieving a full step strike from this period is surprisingly rare, and the presence of complete, uninterrupted steps can dramatically elevate a coin's value. Imagine standing in the Denver Mint back in 1961. Machines clatter, the scent of heated metal fills the air, and planchets slide along mechanical tracks toward the striking dies. Most come out ordinary, the kind that will pass from hand to hand in grocery stores, gas stations, and lunch counters across America. But once in a great while, the dies align perfectly. The pressure is ideal. The coin is struck with just the right force to create an unusually crisp impression. These rare, richly detailed coins, particularly if preserved untouched, are the ones collectors hunt for today. Now consider the millions of nickels that found their way into cash registers, jars, pockets, soda machines, dusty drawers, and truck stops. Most suffered scratches, dents, and discoloration. They were used and reused, rubbed smooth over decades. Many ended up tossed into change counters or rolled into bank wrappers, never earning a second thought. That's why a pristine 1961 nickel, especially a full-step specimen, can become an exciting discovery, but historical context matters too. America in 1961 was a country in transition. John F. Kennedy had just taken office, ushering in a new era of politics, optimism, and modernization. The Cold War simmered beneath daily life. Technology was speeding forward. Cars were changing, television was booming, and space exploration was taking shape in a massive way. Against all this sweeping transformation, coins like the 1961 Jefferson nickel quietly circulated through an evolving society. They bought gasoline when it was just 31 cents a gallon, paid for school lunches, jukebox songs, and movie tickets. They were carried by factory workers, teachers, soldiers, and students. Each 1961 nickel touched more stories than we could ever guess. For collectors today, a coin's worth extends far beyond its face value. It serves as a physical time capsule, a direct connection to the era that created it. And because the Jefferson nickel design remained unchanged for so many years, even small minting variations or condition differences can make one year's edition stand out. Now let's move deeper into what creates value in a 1961 Jefferson nickel today. First, condition is king. Grading services evaluate coins on a scale from poor, P1, to mint state, MS70. Most circulated 1961 nickels, even in moderately good shape, won't command high prices. But uncirculated examples, those that retain their original luster, become much more desirable. Add in the full steps designation, and the coin moves into the territory where collectors eagerly bid against each other. Professional grading organizations like PCGS and NGC have certified examples of the 1961 nickel in high grades that reach appealing price levels for both hobbyists and serious investors. Another surprising detail: the quality of the Denver mint strikes from 1961 was inconsistent. While Denver produced more coins overall, the percentage of full steps examples is low. This paradox, high minting numbers but low high-grade survivors, is exactly the kind of factor that adds mystery and value to a coin. In fact, many collectors actively hunt for high-grade 1961 D nickels because of this scarcity. The Philadelphia strikes, while fewer in number, also face rarity issues in high grades. Poor quality dies at the time contributed to soft impressions, making sharply detailed versions tougher to locate. So even though millions of these coins remain in the world, only a small fraction are in the top condition tiers that collectors prize. Another fascinating angle is the role of mint sets. In 1961, the U.S. Mint released annual sets that included specially preserved coins from both Philadelphia and Denver. These mint set versions are often the best source of higher quality 1961 nickels today, as they were sealed and protected from handling. Yet even among mint set coins, only a few display the perfect strike qualities needed for the highest collectible categories. Collectors often describe finding a premium 1961 nickel as a blend of luck, patience, and persistence. You can look through thousands of nickels and still not uncover one with flawless steps. Others spend years upgrading their collection, replacing a good example with a better one whenever possible. It becomes a treasure hunt embedded within another treasure hunt, and this challenge is exactly what keeps the Jefferson nickel series popular among enthusiasts. Now, while the majority of 1961 nickels remain common and hold only small premiums above face value, the rare high-grade examples can sell for far more. And this brings us to the specific value mentioned in this script, the kind of price that represents a well-preserved, desirable specimen. Toward the conclusion of this exploration, it's important to understand that coin values fluctuate depending on market demand, grading results, collector interest, and overall availability. But special examples of the 1961 nickel, especially high-grade, full-step specimens, can indeed reach impressive values in auctions or private sales. The camera fades in slowly on a dramatic close-up of an aged nickel spinning across a wooden table. A soft metallic ring echoes as it settles on its edge before toppling flat. A warm spotlight shines across its surface, revealing the face of Thomas Jefferson. The narrator speaks with energy and suspense, inviting viewers into a world where common pocket change becomes treasure. Have you ever wondered, the narrator begins, if the coins hidden inside an old jar, resting in your drawer, or tucked away in a dusty box in the attic could actually be worth more than you ever imagined? Today we're diving deep into one of the most intriguing coins in American numismatics, the 1964 mint-marked Jefferson 5-cent nickel. It's a coin millions of people have handled without a second thought, a coin that saw the hands of soldiers, teachers, factory workers, and travelers. But beneath its humble appearance is a fascinating story, rich with history, controversy, and the potential for surprising value. The camera slowly zooms in on a beautifully preserved nickel placed under a magnifying lens. You can see every groove and every subtle ridge on the coin's surface as the narration continues. Before we get into its worth, let's step back in time to understand why the year 1964 holds such significance. The early 1960s were a turbulent period in the United States. The nation was recovering from the shock of President John F. Kennedy's assassination, the civil rights movement was rapidly shifting social structures, and the U.S. Mint was under unusual pressure due to a nationwide coin shortage. People were hoarding silver coins, businesses were struggling with change shortages, and the government scrambled to keep up with demand. It was in this chaotic environment that the 1964 Jefferson nickel was heavily produced. Images transitioned to black and white video footage of busy mint facilities during the 1960s. Machines clank, metal blanks spin, and conveyor belts move fast. The narrator explains, to combat the shortage, the U.S. Mint produced a massive number of nickels in 1964, over 1.5 billion of them between the Philadelphia and Denver facilities. That makes this one of the most common dates in the entire Jefferson nickel series. But, as we'll discover, common does not mean worthless. Certain features, striking errors, mint mark variations, and exceptional condition can turn an ordinary 5-cent coin into something far more valuable. The camera cuts back to the narrator's hands holding two coins side by side. Now, most people don't realize this, but 1964 nickels come with and without a mint mark. The Philadelphia coins had no mint mark, while the Denver coins were marked with a small D on the reverse, just to the right of Monticello. But here's where things start getting interesting. In 1964, the U.S. Mint stopped using mint marks for a time due to fears that collectors were artificially creating shortages by saving coins from specific mints. This decision led to confusion, oddities, and some unusual transitional patterns in later coinage, which makes the 1964 nickel stand out in numismatic history. Zoom in on the precise location of the mint mark. The narrator adds, to identify a 1964 D nickel, you'll want to look at the reverse side of the coin. Just right of Monticello, you should see a tiny D. If it's missing, and the coin is from 1964, that means it's a Philadelphia strike. But the mint mark alone is not what gives these coins their potential value. Instead, it's the combination of condition, die variations, and mint errors that really makes collectors' hearts race. Now the script transitions to the topic of errors, with dramatic lighting and zoom shots of sample coins. So what kind of errors should you keep an eye out for? Well, one of the most sought-after varieties is the full steps designation. On the reverse of a Jefferson nickel, the steps leading up to Monticello should appear crisp and fully defined. However, due to the pressure used in striking and the wear on dies, most nickels do not show complete steps. If your 1964 nickel has sharply detailed steps, especially 5 or 6 full steps, you may have something special. The screen shows comparison shots of typical weak strikes versus crisp full-step details. Another category of valuable coins includes off-center strikes, double die errors, die cracks, and clipped planchets. These mistakes occur when the minting equipment malfunctions or during moments of misalignment. Some of these errors can make the coin dramatically more valuable, especially when they are bold, obvious, and well-defined. The narrator leans in slightly, emphasizing the next point, but there's something more subtle that many collectors overlook: the metal composition. While wartime nickels from 1942 to 1945 were made of silver, the 1964 nickel is composed of 75% copper and 25% nickel. This composition remained standard for decades, but what makes the 1964 issue noteworthy is the massive volume produced. Because so many were struck, people often assume they're worthless. Yet, high-grade examples from 1964 are surprisingly difficult to find. Most nickels circulated heavily, leaving behind scratches, dull surfaces, worn lettering, and faded steps. But those few that survived in pristine condition, untouched by circulation, can be worth far more than their face value. Cut to a dramatic reveal of a pristine coin protected inside a transparent slab. For a collector, condition is everything. A coin that looks ordinary to the untrained eye might actually be a treasure. Coins graded by professional services like PCGS or NGC with high mint state ratings, MS 65, MS 66, or above, can command strong interest from buyers. The shinier, sharper, and more flawless the coin, the more desirable it becomes. But even lower-grade coins can have value if they include rare errors. The camera moves across a series of graded coins with different labels, enhancing the sense of rarity. So how does one evaluate a 1964 Jefferson nickel? First, check for the mint mark. Second, inspect the steps on Monticello for completeness. Third, look closely under a magnifying glass for any doubling in the lettering or details, which could indicate a double die strike. Lastly, examine the rim and edges for irregularities like clips or shifts that may signify errors. Every little detail matters. The narrator smiles warmly, encouraging viewers, and here's the best part: you might already own one of these coins without even knowing it. The 1964 nickel is still extremely common in circulation, and millions of them remain tucked away in jars, bags, wallets, and old coin collections. So grab your change, check your drawers, and inspect every nickel from 1964 that you come across. You never know when you might uncover a hidden gem. The music swells and the camera transitions to a closing shot of a rare high-condition nickel lying under a spotlight. Now let's talk value. While many 1964 nickels remain worth only their face value or slightly more, the standout pieces, those with full steps, extraordinary condition, or dramatic errors, can bring significantly higher prices in the collector market. Exceptional examples in pristine condition can reach notable figures. VW diving deep into one such overlooked treasure, the 1983 D Mint Mark Jefferson 5-cent nickel. This is not just a coin, it's a time capsule, a survivor of a unique economic moment, a lesson in scarcity, and, for collectors, a surprisingly rewarding hidden gem. This video will take you through the backstory, design elements, mintage numbers, errors, condition factors, market trends, and the real-world collector worth of the coin, including the exact figure you requested, expressed in full words at the end. Buckle up, because the value of this coin is not where most people expect it to be. A look back at 1983, setting the scene. To understand why a 1983 D Jefferson nickel has captured collectors' attention, we need to rewind time. The early 1980s in the United States were marked by major economic shifts, high inflation, fluctuating metal prices, and evolving mint production priorities. In 1982 and 1983, the U.S. Mint did not produce official uncirculated mint sets, which normally help preserve high-grade examples of coins for future collectors. Because of this, most 1983 coins entered circulation immediately. That single decision greatly reduced the number of high-grade, untouched Jefferson nickels from that year, making pristine versions far rarer today. Scarcity often drives collector interest, and in this case, scarcity is directly tied to the turbulent economic landscape of the early 1980s. Understanding the 1983 D Mint Mark Jefferson nickel. Let's talk design and important identifiers. The obverse features Thomas Jefferson, designed by Felix Schlag, whose portrait became a symbol of American currency design for decades. The reverse shows Jefferson's iconic home, Monticello, simple, symmetrical, and instantly recognizable, the Mint Mark D. Placed on the obverse to the right of Jefferson, indicates production at the Denver Mint. Denver's output that year was high, over 540 million nickels, but remember, high mintage does not guarantee high survival in collectible condition. Why the 1983 D nickel became valuable? There are three major reasons collectors are paying premiums for high-quality examples. Lack of uncirculated mint sets. With no official mint sets available that year, collectors were deprived of preserved, high-grade specimens. As a result, most coins were exchanged, handled, dropped, scratched, and forgotten. Condition sensitivity. The nickel composition, a mix of copper and nickel, tends to develop contact marks easily. Bag marks, scratches, discoloration, and where are extremely common on coins produced in the early 1980s. High-grade surviving examples are rare. Finding a truly pristine coin from circulation that grades MS66 or higher is incredibly difficult. Professional grading services often assign low grades to 1983D nickels due to the damage accumulated in circulation. This combination makes high-grade versions of the 1983D nickel particularly attractive to collectors today. Key errors that increase value. In addition to standard high-grade coins, certain error varieties can drastically increase a coin's desirability. Here are some examples collectors watch closely. Off-center strikes. These occur when the coin is misaligned during striking, leaving part of the design missing. Double die obverse. Some rare pieces show doubled lettering or details, making them valuable. Clipped planchets. A crescent-shaped clip where the metal was miscut, often drawing premium interest. Weak strikes. Some 1983D nickels show softer details due to worn dies. These errors can sometimes be worth significantly more than the standard version, depending on the severity and visibility. How condition influences value. Condition is everything in coin collecting. Most 1983D Jefferson nickels found today grade between very fine and extremely fine due to heavy circulation. These grades show noticeable wear on Jefferson's cheek and jaw, reduced detail on the steps of Monticello, loss of luster, minor scratches and surface dullness. However, when a coin emerges in mint state condition, with original luster, sharp strike, and minimal marks, the value jumps dramatically. Coins that exhibit full steps designation, meaning the steps of Monticello are sharply defined, are among the most sought after. Mintage versus survival. The real rarity: over 500 million coins were minted in Denver in 1983. That sounds like a huge number, and it is. But here's the surprising part: despite massive mintage, the number of surviving high-grade examples is extremely small. Over 99% of these coins have been lost, worn, damaged, or spent into oblivion. Think of it this way: millions made does not mean millions remain. Collectors aren't chasing the quantity minted, they're after the few surviving examples that escape the harsh realities of circulation. That's where rarity truly lies. How to identify a high-value 1983D nickel. If you have one of these coins or plan to search through your spare change, here's what to look for: strong mint luster, minimal surface contact marks, sharp, bold details on Jefferson's hair and face, clear mint mark, sharp steps on Monticello. If the steps are visible and unbroken, the coin might qualify for a full steps designation, greatly increasing value. The rarity of full steps coins from 1983 cannot be overstated. Why collectors love this coin today? The appeal of the 1983D nickel goes beyond its monetary worth. Collectors appreciate it because it represents a challenging date for mint state quality. It tells the story of minting decisions and economic conditions. It bridges the gap between modern and vintage numismatics. It offers the thrill of the hunt. Finding a high-grade piece is exciting and rewarding. This coin is an example of how numismatics turns ordinary pocket change into historical artifacts. Market demand and modern value trends. Over the past decade, interest in 1980s coins has surged. More collectors focus on high-grade modern coins, registry sets, conditional rarities, full steps nickels. Auction prices reflect this shift. As more collectors compete for the limited number of top-grade examples, prices have steadily risen. Even mid-grade pieces have seen increased demand simply because finding clean, problem-free coins from circulation is difficult. How to protect and preserve these coins. If you own a 1983D nickel that appears to be in great condition, do not handle it directly. Here are a few key preservation tips. Always hold coins by the edges to avoid fingerprints. Store them in non-PVC holders or capsules. Avoid cleaning the coin. Cleaning destroys collector value. Keep coins away from humidity and extreme temperatures. If your coin looks exceptional, consider professional grading to authenticate its condition and maximize potential value. Is it worth searching rolls and collections? Absolutely. The thrill of roll hunting appeals to many hobbyists. Searching bank rolls of nickels, older coin jars, inherited collections, or estate sale hoards could uncover hidden gems. With modern collectors increasingly aware of this coin's potential, now is the time to search while unexamined rolls still exist. Final thoughts: why this coin matters. The 1983D Jefferson nickel teaches collectors an important lesson. Rarity is not always about low mintage. Sometimes, it's about surviving quality. This coin stands as a reminder that even in a sea of millions, true gems exist. Whether you're a seasoned numismatist or a curious beginner, the 1983 D nickel offers history, intrigue, challenge, and value wrapped into a 5-cent piece that most people overlook. Today, we're exploring a coin that millions of Americans have touched, traded, and forgotten, yet among those millions, a few special survivors can be worth far more than anyone expects. This is the story of the 1984 D. Jefferson 5-cent nickel from the United States Mint, a coin that is far more interesting than its humble appearance suggests. Imagine reaching into your pocket and pulling out a nickel. It jingles together with pennies, dimes, and maybe a quarter or two. You barely look at it before setting it down or handing it over to a cashier. But what if that harmless little coin in your pocket had the potential to be a miniature time capsule from the mid-1980s, an era of cassette players, arcade machines, early computers, big hair, denim jackets, and bold American culture? What if that nickel carried a hidden secret that only a trained eye could see? And what if that small detail could turn a 5-cent coin into a far more valuable collectible? Let's travel back to 1984, a year that was memorable for reasons far beyond coins. The Olympics were held in Los Angeles. Ghostbusters was a blockbuster hit. Apple introduced the Macintosh computer. But quietly, without fanfare, the U.S. Mint in Denver was striking millions upon millions of nickels bearing the image of Thomas Jefferson. Nearly everyone who touched one of those nickels had no idea that decades later, collectors would be hunting through jars, drawers, boxes, old purses, and unsearched rolls looking for specific variations that they hoped had survived the journey of time, circulation, and wear. The 1984 D. Jefferson nickel is part of the long and storied Jefferson nickel series that began in 1938. Designed by Felix Schlag, the coin honors Thomas Jefferson on the obverse and showcases his iconic home, Monticello, on the reverse. The D. Mint mark beneath the date indicates it was struck at the Denver Mint. Denver produced a massive quantity that year, over 563 million nickels, so at first glance, it sounds like a coin that should be extremely common. And in most cases, it is. But survival is never evenly distributed. While many nickels stayed in circulation, countless others suffered heavy wear, damage, corrosion, or simply got lost to time. Meanwhile, only a tiny percentage remained in nearly pristine condition, preserved by chance or by collectors who knew that untouched examples could one day be special finds. Collectors obsess over details that the average person never notices. They study the sharpness of Jefferson's hair, the clarity of the steps on Monticello, the shape of the mint mark, the smoothness of the coin's fields, and even the tiniest imperfections that might signal doubling, over-polishing, or die deterioration. For the 1984 D nickel, collectors especially look for strong strikes and exceptional luster, qualities that can dramatically increase the desirability of the coin. One of the fascinating aspects of coin collecting is the hierarchy of grading. A circulated 1984 D nickel, worn from decades of pocket use, might be worth only a few cents over face value. But when a coin remains in a high state of preservation, especially when professionally graded by services such as PCGS or NGC, it becomes a different story entirely. The difference between a well-worn coin worth little and a gleaming mint state example worth significantly more comes down to razor-thin distinctions that trained graders evaluate under magnification and precise lighting. Collectors dream of finding examples with what specialists call full steps, a designation referring to the steps on Monticello being fully sharp and separated. However, the 1984 D nickel is notorious for weak strikes, and finding a full steps example is extremely difficult. Because of this rarity, high-grade full steps pieces can command far higher values. It's like discovering a needle in a haystack, hidden, unnoticed, and extremely rewarding if you happen to be the lucky finder. But even without full steps, sharply struck mint state examples can bring strong prices at auctions or among collectors searching for upgrades to their sets. The demand for high-quality modern nickels has grown as more collectors appreciate the difficulty of finding well-preserved specimens from high-mintage years. Most of these coins were released into everyday circulation almost immediately after striking, making careless handling the norm rather than the exception. Now picture this: a collector sitting at a table, carefully examining a roll of nickels fresh from a bank. They turn coin after coin under a bright light, flipping them between their fingers, listening to the soft clink of metal. Suddenly, one coin stands out. The details are sharp. The surface gleams. There are no major scratches, no discoloration, no dull surfaces dulled by decades of wear. The collector's heart beats a little faster. Could this be one of the valuable survivors? They take a closer look. The strike is crisp. Jefferson's profile is clear. The rim is clean. The coin might be a candidate for professional grading. And that's the moment when a common nickel becomes a potential treasure. This is what makes coin collecting so magical. It's not just about money, it's about discovery. It's the thrill of finding something unexpected in a familiar place. It's the excitement of holding a piece of history that others overlooked. And for the 1984 D nickel, that thrill has grown as more collectors realize that pristine examples are far scarcer than the original mintage numbers suggest. As interest continues to rise, more collectors seek these Denver minted nickels in high grade. And while the majority of circulated coins won't bring more than modest collector value, uncirculated or graded examples can absolutely be worth far more. It's not unusual for certified high-grade coins to bring strong prices in online auctions or coin shows where collectors compete for the best examples available. What makes the story even more intriguing is that the 1984 D nickel teaches an important lesson: common coins are not always common. Age, condition, rarity of high grades, and collector demand all work together to shape value. And this value is not static. Some coins become more desirable as awareness grows, grading standards evolve, and collectors seek higher quality for their personal sets. Imagine placing a flawless 1984 D nickel next to one that has spent decades circulating. The difference is striking. One has sharp details and glowing luster, the other is worn down by time. Yet both began life in the same mint, struck by the same machines, and released into the same economy. Their destinies diverged only because of how they were handled, or not handled, over the years, and now, after all this time, collectors continue searching for the rare gems hidden among the ordinary. They sift through coin jars, boxes in attics, inherited collections, estate sales, and bank rolls. They examine nickels under magnifying glasses, hoping to spot that one special example that has survived the odds. When such a coin appears, especially in exceptional condition, it becomes more than metal. It becomes a collectible. A prized find. A piece of American history preserved against time and chance. And yes, it becomes worth real money, sometimes surprisingly more than its tiny face value, and that brings us to the price point that collectors often ask about. After exploring the history, the significance, the grading, and the rarity of high-quality examples, viewers naturally want to know what kind of real-world value a standout specimen can bring.